"Take of your clothes now," said the lonely cowboy to the giant bride. She did. The cowboy shocked. The rain fell like bullets that November evening in 1867, hammering the cracked earth of the Sierra foothills with a fury that matched the violence brewing in Elijah Kane's chest. Blood seeped through his fingers as he pressed them against the wound in his side, his horse long gone, spooked by gunfire and thunder. The ambush had come fast. 3 men, maybe 4, their faces hidden behind bandanas, their intentions clear: rob him blind and leave him for the buzzards. He'd gotten 2 of them before taking a slug himself. Now he stumbled through the darkening wilderness, each step a negotiation between consciousness and the black void that kept reaching for him. The mountains loomed ahead, their shadows deep and unforgiving, but shelter was shelter, and death by exposure beat bleeding out in the open. Elijah had stopped fearing death years ago, when the flames had taken Sarah and their unborn child, when he'd stood helpless outside their burning cabin while Confederate raiders laughed in the distance. Something inside him had turned to ash alongside them. He'd spent the war afterward killing with mechanical precision, and the years since wandering, searching for something he couldn't name. Peace, maybe, or punishment. The cave mouth appeared like a wound in the mountainside, barely visible through the sheets of rain. He half fell, half crawled inside, his vision tunneling. The last thing he remembered was the strange smell of mountain herbs and something else, something impossibly clean, like fresh snow, before darkness swallowed him whole. Warmth. That was the first thing Elijah registered when consciousness returned. Not the biting cold of the cave he'd crawled into, but genuine warmth, radiating from somewhere nearby. His eyelids felt heavy as stones, but he forced them open. The ceiling of the cave stretched high above him, far higher than he remembered. Firelight danced across walls decorated with strange symbols, not quite writing, not quite art, something ancient and deliberate. He lay on a bed of soft furs and dried grasses, his shirt removed, his wound cleaned and wrapped in what appeared to be leaves bound with sinew. Then he saw her. She sat across the fire, and Elijah's breath caught in his throat. She was a woman, or something close to one, but impossibly tall. Even seated, she towered over where he lay. Her skin was pale as moonlight on snow, her hair a cascade of platinum that fell past her waist like a waterfall frozen in time. Her eyes, when they met his, were the gray blue of a winter sky, filled with something he couldn't quite identify. Not malice, not hunger, something softer, sadness perhaps. "You're awake," she said, her voice like wind through canyon walls, deep, resonant, but somehow gentle. "I wasn't certain you would survive." The iron went deep. Elijah tried to sit up, but pain lanced through his side. "What? Who are you?" "Names are complicated," she replied, reaching for a crude bowl beside her. Her hand was enormous, the fingers long and elegant despite their size. "The mountain people call me many things. Mountain's daughter, the white ghost, monster." She said the last word without particular emotion, as if she'd grown accustomed to it. "You may call me Alura, if you wish. It's what my mother named me before she left." "Where am I?" "My home." She moved closer, and Elijah's heart hammered against his ribs. She could crush him with one hand if she chose, but her movements were careful, measured, as if she were the one afraid. "You crawled into my cave 3 nights ago. I've been keeping you alive." 3 nights. Elijah looked down at his wound. The leaves covering it were stained with some kind of greenish paste that smelled of pine and something medicinal. Why? Alura paused, the bowl halfway to her lips. Why did I save you? Why didn't you let me die? She considered this for a long moment. Because, she said finally, I know what it is to be alone. I hear it in the heartbeat of every injured creature that stumbles into these mountains. That deep, hollow sound, like a drum with no one to dance to its rhythm. She held out the bowl. Drink. It will help with the pain. Elijah studied her face. Despite her size, despite the strangeness of her pale features, there was something undeniably human in her expression. Something familiar in that loneliness she spoke of. He took the bowl. It was no larger than a thimble in her hand, but fit his own perfectly, and drank. The liquid tasted bitter and sweet at once, like medicine and honey mixed. Thank you, he said quietly. Alura's eyes widened slightly as if she hadn't expected gratitude. You're not afraid? Should I be? Most men are. The few who've seen me and lived to tell of it anyway, they call me abomination, demon. Some have tried to kill me. Others tried to capture me, sell me to traveling shows like a circus animal. Her voice remained even, but Elijah heard the pain beneath it. You don't seem surprised by what I am. I've seen stranger things, Elijah lied. Truth was, he was terrified, but fear had become such a constant companion these past years that it barely registered anymore. And I reckon anyone who'd save a dying stranger can't be all bad, no matter their size. Something shifted in Alura's face, a crack in the careful neutrality she'd maintained, the ghost of a smile. You're kind, she said, or perhaps you've simply lost your sense of self-preservation. Maybe both. Elijah shifted, wincing. How bad is it? The wound will heal if infection doesn't set in. You'll need to rest for several more days, perhaps a week. She stood, unfolding to her full height, and Elijah's breath caught again. She had to be 8 feet tall, possibly more. I'll bring you food. There's deer meat smoking over the back fire, and I have potatoes growing in the lower cave where the sun reaches. You farm? I survive, Alura corrected. The mountain provides if you know how to listen to it. That night, after Elijah had fallen into an exhausted sleep, Alura sat at the cave entrance and stared at the stars. She'd lived 40 winters, or was it 41 now? Time moved differently when you were alone, and in all those years she'd never allowed anyone to stay this long. The injured animals she tended, the occasional lost traveler she directed back to the trails, they all left within hours, days at most. But this man, this Elijah Kane, couldn't leave. Not yet. His wound was deep, his body weak from blood loss. And if she were honest with herself, she didn't want him to leave. That terrified her more than any hunter's gun ever had. Her mother's words echoed through memory. You'll outlive everyone, little star. That's our curse. We love and we lose and we carry it all forever. Her mother, Nijoni of the mountain tribes, had been beautiful and fierce, had caught the attention of something ancient during a vision quest in her youth, something that walked the boundary between earth and spirit, something that had given her a child neither fully human nor fully other. Alura had been that child, born too large, growing too fast, aging too slow. Her mother had loved her fiercely, had taught her the ways of healing and survival, had sung her the old songs that made the stones sing back. But as Nijoni's hair turned gray and her steps grew slow, Alura remained unchanged. frozen at what appeared to be 20 years old, though decades had passed. The day Najoni died, Alura had held her mother's withered hand, a hand that had once seemed so strong, and made a promise she would never love, never allow herself to care for anything that could be taken away. The pain of loss was too great, too terrible for someone who would live to see centuries pass. She kept that promise for 20 years, until 3 nights ago, when a dying cowboy had crawled into her cave and she'd found herself unable to let him die. This is dangerous, she thought, watching him sleep. He's human, mortal. Even if he stays, even if by some miracle he wanted to stay, he'll age and wither and leave me behind, just like Mother did. But when he'd said thank you with such simple sincerity, when he'd looked at her without the revulsion she'd grown accustomed to, something in her chest had cracked. Something she'd thought sealed shut forever. She couldn't let it grow, wouldn't let it grow. When he healed, she'd send him away, back to his human world, his human life. And she'd return to her solitude, her safety, her careful existence of never feeling too much. That was the only way. Elijah woke before dawn, his body protesting every movement. The wound in his side throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, but it was manageable. He'd had worse, much worse. Sarah's face flickered through his mind, a habit he couldn't break, even after 5 years. He remembered the way she'd laughed, her head thrown back, when he'd proposed to her clumsily in her father's barn. Remembered the way she'd held his hand during the early days of their marriage, anchoring him when the war's nightmares threatened to pull him under. Remembered the soft swell of her belly where their child grew, the child he'd never meet. He remembered the flames. After Sarah died, Elijah had made his own promise. He'd never love again, never risk that kind of pain, that complete destruction of self that came from losing someone you'd built your world around. He'd become a ghost, drifting through life, taking jobs that required violence because violence was simple. Violence didn't require vulnerability. And now here he was, in a cave with a woman, no, a being, so far outside his understanding that she might as well be from another world entirely. A being who'd shown him kindness he didn't deserve, who'd saved his life without asking for anything in return. A being who, when she smiled that tentative smile, made something in his chest hurt worse than any bullet wound. Don't, he told himself firmly, don't even think about it. She's not human, she's not Sarah. And you're not the man you were before the fire. You're broken, and broken things don't get second chances. When Alura returned from her morning rounds with fresh water and herbs for his wound, Elijah kept his eyes on the cave wall, afraid of what she might see if he looked directly at her. "You're in pain," she observed, kneeling beside him with that careful precision she always used. The medicine should have lasted through the night. "It's fine," he said curtly, "just sore." Her hand stilled. "Did I do something wrong?" "No." He softened his tone. "No, you've done everything right. I'm just not used to being cared for." "Neither am I," she said quietly. "Used to caring for anyone, I mean. It's strange." Strange bad or strange good? She considered this while changing his bandages. "Both," she admitted. "Frightening, mostly. I've spent so long alone that having someone here feels like inviting a storm into a calm harbor. I don't know what damage it might do." Elijah understood that better than she knew. "Then why save me?" "I don't know." Her voice was barely audible. "I'll wish I didn't." I wish I'd let you die because that would have been simpler, cleaner. But I couldn't. And now you're here, and I can't quite regret it, even though I should." He finally looked at her, then really looked, saw the conflict in those storm cloud eyes, the way her enormous hands trembled slightly as they worked, saw someone as afraid and scarred as he was, just wearing it differently. "I'll leave," he said. "As soon as I can walk properly, I'll go, and you can go back to your life." Something flashed across her face. Relief? Disappointment? Both. "Yes," she said, "that would be best." Neither of them sounded convinced. Over the following days, a strange dance developed between them. They were polite, careful, maintaining a distance that felt artificial and necessary in equal measure. Alura tended Elijah's wound with clinical efficiency, no longer lingering over the task. Elijah asked no personal questions, keeping their conversations focused on practical matters, the weather, the mountain terrain, the healing process. But the walls they'd built kept developing cracks. It started with small things. Alura would hum while preparing food, old songs in her mother's language, and Elijah found himself memorizing the melodies. Elijah would talk in his sleep, fragments of memories escaping, and Alura would sit nearby, listening to stories about a woman named Sarah and a life burned to ash. One evening, Elijah broke first. "You said your mother left," he said suddenly, interrupting the comfortable silence they'd been sharing by the fire. "Where did she go?" Alura's hand stilled over the leather she'd been working. "I told you, she died." "That's not leaving, that's just ending." He shifted to face her better, ignoring the protest from his ribs. "My wife died too. Feels different from leaving." "Does it?" Alura's voice was sharp. "Does it matter whether someone chooses to go or is taken? The result is the same. You're alone." "It matters because—" He stopped, unsure how to articulate the difference. "When Sarah died, I was angry at the men who killed her, at God, at myself for not being there. But I was never angry at her. She didn't choose to leave me." "My mother didn't choose to die either," Alura said, her words clipped. "But she chose to have me, knowing what I'd become, knowing I'd have to watch her age and fade while I stayed frozen. She condemned me to that. That's not fair. Life isn't fair." Alura threw down the leather. "Life is cruel and arbitrary, and it takes everything you love and grinds it to dust. The only way to survive is to not love anything in the first place." "Is that what you believe?" "It's what I know." She stood abruptly, her height suddenly imposing. "It's what your Sarah would tell you if she could. That loving her was a mistake, that opening yourself to that kind of pain is foolish, that you should seal yourself away where nothing can hurt you again." Elijah pushed himself upright despite the pain, anger flaring. "Don't you dare put words in her mouth. You didn't know her." "I know pain," Alura's voice echoed off the cave walls. "I know loss. I buried my mother with these hands, dug her grave in the frozen earth because I was the only one strong enough. I've lived 20 years in silence because speaking to the empty air makes you mad. I've watched the seasons change and the animals live and die and entire generations of humans come and go while I stay the same. And you—" Her voice broke. "You dare tell me I don't understand loss?" The silence that followed was deafening. "I'm sorry," Elijah said finally. "You're right. I don't know your pain, just like you don't know mine. But that doesn't mean—" He took a breath. "That doesn't mean we're better off alone." "Doesn't it?" Alura turned away. "Tell me, Elijah Kane, If you could go back knowing how it would end, would you still choose to love your Sarah? He didn't answer immediately. It was the question that had haunted him for 5 years, the one that kept him awake in the small hours. Would he? Would he trade those 3 years of happiness for the lifetime of grief that followed? Yes, he said finally. Every time, yes. Alura's shoulders shook. Then you're a braver man than I am a woman, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't choose that kind of pain again. Again? Elijah caught the word. You've loved before? She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, barely audible, once, when I was younger. Foolish. She wrapped her arms around herself. There was a trapper who got lost in the winter storms. I found him, brought him here. He stayed for 2 months while the snow blocked the passes. He was kind, gentle. He looked at me like I was normal. Beautiful, even. What happened? Spring came, the snow melted, and he left. Her laugh was bitter. Promised he'd come back. Said he'd bring a preacher, that we'd find a way to be together. I believed him. Waited a whole year, watching the trails, listening for his approach. She turned back to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. He never came. Eventually, I went down to the settlement, stayed hidden, and heard the stories. He'd told everyone about the freak in the mountains, the giant woman who'd held him captive. They laughed about it. About me. About how pathetic I was to think. Her voice broke entirely. Elijah moved before thinking, closing the distance between them despite his injury, despite the impossibility of their size difference. He wrapped his arms around her leg, the only part of her he could reach, and held on. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so damn sorry that happened to you. Alura sank down, curling herself small, and suddenly they were closer to the same height. Her tears fell like rain. I swore I'd never be that foolish again, never open myself to that kind of humiliation. And now you're here, and I can feel the walls cracking, and I'm so afraid. Of what? Of you. She looked at him with raw honesty. Of caring about you, of watching you leave, of being left behind again with nothing but memories that will outlive mountains. Elijah cupped her face with both hands, his palms barely spanning half her cheek. Then I'm afraid too, he admitted, because I swore the same thing. Swore I'd never let anyone matter again, that I'd never risk feeling what I felt when Sarah died. And you're making it real hard to keep that promise. We're both fools then. Maybe. Or maybe, he searched for the right words. Maybe we're just two broken people trying to figure out if broken things can fit together, even when they don't make sense. Alura closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. I don't want to feel this, she whispered. It hurts too much already, and nothing's even happened. I know. Believe me, I know. He rested his forehead against hers as best he could. But I think maybe the hurting means we're still alive, still capable of feeling something other than emptiness. They stayed like that for a long time, two damaged souls offering each other the broken pieces of comfort they had left. The next day, Alura was distant again, but differently, not cold, careful, as if she were handling something fragile. Elijah understood. Last night's confession had left them both raw, exposed in ways that felt dangerous. I need to check my snares in the eastern valley, she said after breakfast. You're strong enough to walk now. You should come. The exercise will help your healing. It was clearly an excuse, but Elijah took it. They walked through the mountain forest in silence, Alura matching her enormous stride to his more modest pace. The morning was crisp, the sky painfully blue. Birds called to each other in the pines. "My mother used to say that the mountains test everyone who enters them," Alura said eventually, "that they show you truths about yourself you'd rather not see. She said that's why she came here for her vision quest, to face herself honestly." "What did she find?" "She never told me the full story, only that she met my father in a place between sleeping and waking, that he showed her the price of bridging worlds." Alura ducked under a low branch, "and that she chose to pay it anyway." They reached the valley, a small meadow dotted with wildflowers despite the approaching winter. Alura checked her snares, 2 rabbits, and reset them with practiced efficiency. Then she turned to Elijah with an expression he couldn't read. "I want to show you something," she said, "but you have to promise not to judge what you see." "I promise." She led him to the far side of the meadow, where the tree line began again. There, half hidden by undergrowth, was a structure made of woven branches and mud. Too small for Alura, but sized for someone more human. "I built this," she said quietly, "years ago, after the trapper left. I told myself it was for storage, for keeping things dry. But really it was—" She trailed off. "A house," Elijah finished, "for someone your size." "For someone his size, I imagined he'd come back, that we'd have children maybe, that they'd be somewhere between his size and mine. I built this for a family I'd never have." She kicked at the structure, and it collapsed easily, rotted through. "Foolish." Elijah looked at the ruins, then at her. "Not foolish. Hopeful. There's a difference. Hope hurts worse than despair." "Does it?" He walked closer. "When Sarah died, I had 2 choices. I could hope that someday the pain would lessen, that someday I might find a reason to keep living. Or I could despair, put a gun in my mouth, end it. I chose hope. Some days I still don't know if it was the right choice. But I'm here. That has to count for something." Alura sat heavily on the ground, her back against a tree. "What are we doing, Elijah? Why are we telling each other these things? It doesn't change anything. You're still human, still mortal. I'm still this." She gestured at herself. "Even if we wanted something more, even if we were both brave enough to try, how would it work? I'd watch you age and die, and I'd be alone again. Or worse, you'd be the one watching me fade, wondering if I'd ever really loved you, or if you were just a temporary distraction from eternity." "I don't have answers," Elijah admitted. He sat beside her, his shoulder barely reaching her hip, even when they were both seated. "All I know is that for the first time in 5 years, I feel something other than empty. When I'm with you, I don't feel like a ghost. I feel real." "I feel the same," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." "Then let's be terrified together." He took her hand. It took both of his to hold just her fingers. No promises about forever, no grand declarations, just this, whatever this is, for as long as it makes sense. Alura looked down at their joined hands. "That's not enough," she said, but there was no conviction in it. "It can't be enough." "Maybe not, but maybe it's better than nothing." She pulled her hand away, stood abruptly. "No," she said, her voice firmer. "No, I can't do this halfway. I can't open myself to caring about you while holding back parts of my heart just in case. That's not fair to either of us." "Then what do you want?" "I want—" She turned to face him, and there were tears on her cheeks again. I want to send you away. I want you to leave tomorrow and never come back. I want to forget you exist and go back to my safe, numb existence where nothing hurts because nothing matters. Alura, but I also want you to stay, she continued, her voice breaking. I want you to look at me the way you did last night. I want to hear your stories and tell you mine. I want to be foolish and hopeful and all the things I swore I'd never be again. She knelt down, bringing herself closer to his level. And I hate myself for wanting it, for being weak enough to let you matter. Elijah stood, moved directly in front of her, eye to eye now. You're not weak, he said fiercely. You're the strongest person I've ever met. It takes no strength to shut yourself away. It takes everything you have to open yourself up again after being hurt. Then why does it feel like I'm breaking? Because you are. We both are. That's how healing works. You break open the old wounds so they can close properly. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. I'm breaking too, Alura, right along with you. She kissed him then, a soft, desperate press of lips that tasted like salt and fear and hope all mingled together. When they pulled apart, both were shaking. I'm still afraid, she whispered. So am I. What do we do with that? Elijah smiled slightly. We could try being afraid together instead of apart. See if it's any easier. Alura laughed, a broken, watery sound. That might be the worst plan I've ever heard. Got a better one? She thought about it, then shook her head. No, I don't. Then let's try it my way. But fear, once acknowledged, doesn't simply disappear. Over the next week, as Elijah's strength returned fully, the tension between them grew. They circled each other like dancers who'd forgotten the steps, reaching out and then pulling back, drawn together and pushed apart by equal measures. Alura would cook his meals with extra care, seasoning the meat the way he mentioned liking, then turn cold and formal when he thanked her. Elijah would start to tell her a story from his past, then catch himself and fall silent, afraid of giving away too much. They'd sleep on opposite sides of the cave despite there being more than enough room, both lying awake, hyper-aware of the other's breathing. The breaking point came on the 8th day. You're well enough to travel now, Alura announced at breakfast, not meeting his eyes. Your wound has closed cleanly. You move without pain. There's no reason for you to stay longer. Elijah set down his food. Is that what you want? For me to leave? It's what makes sense. That's not what I asked. Alura finally looked at him, her expression guarded. What I want is irrelevant. You have a life to return to, a world that makes sense. Staying here with me is just hiding, running away from reality. Maybe I'm tired of reality, Elijah shot back. Maybe the world I left behind isn't one I want to return to. Then you're being a coward. The word hung in the air like a thrown knife. Elijah stood slowly. Say that again. You're being a coward, Alura repeated, standing as well, using her height deliberately now. You're hiding in this cave the same way I've been hiding for 20 years, pretending that isolation is noble when really it's just fear dressed up as strength. If you truly cared about... She stopped herself. If you truly cared, you'd face your life. Deal with whatever you left behind, not run away to play house with a monster in the mountains. Don't call yourself that. Why not? It's what I am, what I've always been. You're just too caught up in your own pain to see it clearly. Her voice was cruel now, deliberately so. Go home, Elijah Kane. Go back to your saloons and your gunfights and your normal human existence. Find a normal human woman who you can build a normal human life with. Stop wasting both our time with this fantasy. Elijah felt anger surge through him, clean and clarifying. You're doing this on purpose, he said, pushing me away, saying the worst things you can think of, so I'll leave and you can tell yourself you were right all along. That hope was stupid. That caring was foolish. Maybe I am, or maybe I'm finally being honest. She turned away. Either way, you should leave. Today. Now. No. No? She spun back, her eyes flashing. You don't get to decide that. This is my home. I'm telling you to leave. Then tell me honestly. Elijah moved closer despite the disparity in their sizes. Look me in the eye and tell me you feel nothing, that these past weeks meant nothing, that you want me gone. Say it without hiding behind anger or fear, and I'll walk out that cave entrance and you'll never see me again. Alura opened her mouth, then closed it, opened it again. Honest, Alura, no walls, no defenses, just truth. I hate you, she said, but her voice broke. I hate you for making me feel this, for making me hope again, for looking at me like I'm beautiful when I know what I am. I hate you for being kind and brave and exactly the kind of man who'd get himself killed trying to save something that doesn't want saving. Tears streamed down her face. And I hate that I can't say the words you want to hear because saying them makes them real. And if they're real, then losing them will destroy me. Then let me say them first, Elijah said. He climbed onto a rock so they were at equal height, took her face in his hands. I'm falling in love with you, Alura. Maybe I already have. I don't know how it works or if it's possible or if we're both insane for even considering it. But I look at you and I see someone worth staying for, worth fighting for, worth choosing every single day for however many days we get. Elijah. And I know you're afraid. I know you've been hurt and abandoned and called terrible things by people who didn't deserve to speak your name. But I'm not him. I'm not the trapper who betrayed you. I'm not your mother who left you behind. I'm just a broken man who found something worth being unbroken for. He pressed his forehead to hers. So, push me away if you have to. Hate me if it's easier. But don't lie and say you feel nothing, because I can see it in your eyes. The same terrified hope I feel every time I look at you. Alura was sobbing now, her enormous frame shaking. I do love you, she finally gasped out. God help me, I love you so much it feels like dying. And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to love someone without losing them. Neither do I, Elijah admitted. But maybe we figure it out together. She pulled him close, careful of her strength, and held him like he was the most precious thing in the world. Promise me something, she whispered. Anything. Promise me that if you leave, not today, but someday, you'll tell me the truth. You'll say goodbye. You won't just disappear and leave me wondering if I imagined all of this. Elijah pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I promise, but I'm not planning on leaving. You say that now, but life has a way of changing plans. Then we'll change with it. He kissed her softly, together. For the first time since he'd arrived, Alura smiled, a real smile, unguarded and bright as sunrise. Together, she agreed, even though we're both terrified. Especially because we're both terrified. But their fragile peace was shorter than either hoped. 2 days later, Elijah woke with a sense of wrongness he couldn't name. It was the same instinct that had kept him alive through the war, through countless gunfights. the knowledge that danger was near even before seeing it. "I need to go to Dust Vale," he said over breakfast. Alura's hands stilled. "Why?" "I have debts to settle, pay owed to me from before the ambush, and—" He hesitated. "People will be wondering what happened to me. If I just disappear, they'll come looking. Might even come looking here." "I see." Her voice was carefully neutral. "When will you leave?" "This morning, but Alura—" He reached across to touch her hand. "I'm coming back. This isn't goodbye. This is just handling reality, so we can keep building whatever this is between us." She nodded, but he could see the fear in her eyes, the assumption that he was leaving for good, that his promises meant nothing, that she was about to be abandoned again. "I love you," he said firmly, "and I'm coming back. Trust me. I'll try." He rode down the mountain as the sun climbed higher, his heart heavy despite his intentions. The wound in his side had healed to little more than a scar thanks to Alura's care, but a different kind of pain had taken up residence in his chest, the ache of leaving someone behind, even temporarily. He hadn't felt that in years. Dust Vale welcomed him back with the casual indifference of a town that had long stopped caring about individual tragedies. He collected his pay from the general store, bought supplies he thought Alura might need, a proper knife, salt, a harmonica he thought she might enjoy. He was preparing to leave again when Silas Cobb arrived. Cobb was a bounty hunter with a reputation for collecting things other men wouldn't touch, unusual bounties, exotic captures for wealthy collectors back east who paid premium prices for the strange and unexplained. He wore a long coat despite the heat and had eyes like a snake's, flat and unfeeling. He cornered Elijah in the saloon 3 days after his return. "Heard you spent time in the high country recently," Cobb said, sliding into the chair across from Elijah's without invitation. "Heard you came back healthy, despite being shot to hell and gone. That's mighty curious." "Luck," Elijah replied, not looking up from his whiskey. "Luck." Cobb smiled without warmth. "Or maybe something else. Someone else." He leaned forward. "I've been tracking stories of the mountain giant for 2 years now. Got a buyer in San Francisco who'll pay $5,000 for something like that. Alive, preferably, but dead works too if preserved properly." Elijah's hand tightened around his glass. "Don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. I think you found her. And I think you're going to tell me where she is, because if you don't, well—" Cobb gestured subtly toward the 3 men standing near the bar, all wearing gun belts, all watching Elijah. "Let's just say accidents happen to uncooperative folks all the time." "Go to hell." Cobb's smile widened. "That's what I thought you'd say." They took him that night, dragged him from his room, beat him in an alley behind the saloon where no one would hear. Cobb didn't ask questions this time. He just hurt, methodically and efficiently, until Elijah's ribs felt like broken pottery and blood filled his mouth. "The cave!" Elijah finally gasped, hating himself even as the words left his lips. "North face of Devil's Peak. There's a cave marked with white stones." It was a lie. Alura's cave was on the eastern face. But Cobb didn't know that. Cobb wouldn't know that until he'd wasted a full day searching the wrong mountainside. "There now," Cobb said pleasantly, standing. "That wasn't so hard. We'll check your story tomorrow. And if you're lying, we'll have another conversation. One that doesn't end with you walking away." They left him bleeding in the dirt, Elijah lay there for maybe an hour, tasting copper and failure before dragging himself upright. His ribs screamed protest, but he ignored them. Had to move, had to warn her, had to get to Alura before Cobb figured out the deception. He stole a horse from behind the livery. His own was long gone, and rode like demons were chasing him toward the mountains. Maybe they were. The sun was setting by the time he reached the familiar trails. His vision swam, his body threatening to shut down, but he pushed forward, had to reach her, had to warn her, had to... He fell from the saddle half a mile from the cave, consciousness slipping. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the evening star, bright against the deepening blue. He prayed, for the first time in years, he prayed that Alura would find him before Cobb did. Alura had been watching the trails. She told herself it was just routine vigilance, the habit of someone who'd lived hidden for so long. But the truth was, she'd been watching for Elijah, waiting for him to come back, afraid he wouldn't. When she saw him fall from the horse, her heart stopped. She reached him in moments, her long stride covering ground with desperate speed. Blood stained his shirt, new wounds, not the healed one she'd tended. His face was swollen, bruised. Someone had hurt him. Someone had hurt him badly. No, 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 she whispered, gathering him into her arms as gently as her fear would allow. Elijah, wake up. Please wake up. His eyes fluttered open. Alura, he breathed. They're coming. Bounty hunters. I tried to mislead them, but they'll figure it out. You have to run. You have to... Hush. Save your strength. She carried him toward the cave, her mind racing. Bounty hunters. Coming here, looking for her. Because of him? Or would they have come eventually regardless? Inside the cave, she laid him on the furs and examined his injuries. Broken ribs, contusions, split lip. Whoever had done this had been thorough. Rage built in her chest, cold and ancient. How long do we have? She asked. Tomorrow. Maybe sooner if they ride through the night. He gripped her hand. I'm sorry. I tried not to tell them. I gave them the wrong location, but it won't take long to search. They'll come here and what? I hide? I run? She stood, her full height imposing in the cave's confines. I've been running my whole life, Elijah. Maybe it's time to stop. You can't fight them. There are 4 of them, all armed. I'm not defenseless. Alura, please, just go. Disappear into the deep mountains where they can't follow. I'll deal with them. I'll tell them you were already gone when I... No. She knelt beside him again. No more running, no more hiding, and no more lies. She took a breath. If they're coming, we face them. Together. That's suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's the first honest thing I've done in 20 years. She smiled sadly. You told me to trust you, to believe you'd come back. You did. Now it's my turn to be brave. Elijah struggled to sit up despite his injuries. I won't let them take you. I won't let them hurt you worse than they already have. She helped him settle back. But if we're going to survive this, we need a plan. These men, what do they want? To capture you, sell you to some collector. Then we make them believe there's nothing to capture. She looked around the cave, her mind working. If they find me dead, already rotting, unsalvageable, they'll leave. How do we fake that convincingly enough? Alura thought for a moment. Then her gaze fell on the dried blood from previous hunts, the mud from the back of the cave, the ash from the fire. We make me into a corpse, she said slowly. Cover me in blood and filth, make me look diseased, decayed. Position me somewhere they'll see immediately. Let them think they're too late. That's actually not a terrible plan. But to make it convincing, I'll need to be undressed. No clothes, no signs of recent life. Just a body left to rot. She met his eyes. You'll have to help me. Make me look dead enough that they won't examine too closely. Elijah understood what she was asking. For vulnerability, for trust, for him to see her at her most exposed and not flinch. Are you sure? No, but I'm sure I won't let them take me alive. This way, at least, we have a chance. She stood, began unlacing her dress. Promise me something, though. When this is over, if we survive, no more half measures. No more holding back parts of ourselves just in case. If we're going to do this, be together, love each other, we do it all the way. No defenses. I promise. He pushed himself upright, every movement agony. Come here. She crossed to him, and he pulled her down to his level, kissed her deeply, thoroughly, trying to communicate everything he felt through that single point of contact. I love you, he said when they broke apart. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that. You saved me in more ways than one. I love you too, she whispered, more than I thought possible, more than I knew I still could. They spent the night preparing. Elijah mixed blood and mud and ash into a convincing approximation of decay. Alura removed her clothing with clinical detachment, trying not to think about how exposed she felt, how vulnerable. This was survival, she told herself. This was necessary. Take off your clothes now, Elijah said as dawn approached, his voice gentle, not a command, but a reminder of what they'd agreed, the plan they'd made. Alura nodded, slipped out of the last garment she'd kept on for warmth through the night, stood before him completely bare, moonlight through the cave entrance painting her skin silver. She expected fear, expected him to hesitate, to show some sign of revulsion at her size, her strangeness. Instead, Elijah looked at her with such reverence it took her breath away. You're beautiful, he said simply. I wish I could see you like this under better circumstances, when it's not about survival, when we have time to... He stopped, shook his head. Later. When this is over, I'm going to worship every inch of you properly. That's a promise. Alura felt tears prick her eyes. Later, she agreed. I'll hold you to that. He worked carefully, covering her skin with the mixture they'd prepared, arranging her hair to obscure her face, positioning her body at an angle that suggested violent death. It was grotesque, horrible, and somehow, through it all, intimate. The trust required to let someone render you this vulnerable, this exposed. When he finished, she looked like something that had been dead for weeks. The effect was disturbingly convincing. How do I look? She asked, trying for lightness. Like you've been through hell. Elijah's voice was thick. Like something precious that was destroyed by cruel hands. Good. That's what we need them to see. She settled into position, forcing her breathing to slow, her body to stillness. Hide yourself. When they come, stay hidden no matter what happens. Promise me. Alura, promise me, Elijah, if they hurt me, if they try to move me, you stay hidden. You've done enough. You tried to protect me. That matters more than you know. Hoofbeats echoed through the canyon before he could argue further. They were here. Elijah pressed himself into the shadows behind a rock formation, gun drawn, heart hammering. He watched as Cobb and his men entered, torches held high, their faces lit with anticipation. Well, I'll be damned, Cobb said, approaching Alura's motionless form. Looks like someone beat us to it." "Is it really her?" one of the others asked. "Big enough to be?" Cobb prodded her with his boot, and Elijah's finger tensed on the trigger. Every instinct screamed at him to shoot, to protect her, but he forced himself to stay still. The plan. Trust the plan. "But rotted beyond salvage. Must have died a month ago at least." He spat. "Waste of time." They started to turn away, to leave, and Elijah felt relief flood through him. It had worked. The deception had held. They were going to survive this. Then Cobb paused. "Still," he said slowly, "might be worth bringing the skull back. Proof we've found it, at least. Maybe get a partial payment." He drew his knife. Elijah moved without thinking, stepping from the shadows with his gun raised. "Step away from her." Cobb spun, his men drawing iron. "Well, well, the helpful cowboy. I should have known you'd be here." "I said step away." "Or what? You'll shoot all 4 of us before we drop you?" Cobb laughed. "I don't think so, friend. Now put that gun down before—" Elijah fired. Cobb went down, clutching his shoulder. The cave erupted in gunfire. He got 2 more before the bullet punched into his chest, spinning him around. Another caught him in the leg. He fell, his gun skittering away across the stone floor, and through the haze of pain saw the last man standing over him, pistol aimed at his head. Then Alura rose. The dried blood and mud cracked and fell away as she moved. Her eyes blazed with ancient fury. The man barely had time to scream before her hand caught him around the throat, lifting him off his feet like a child's doll. "You hurt him," she said, her voice devoid of the gentleness Elijah had come to know. This was something older, something primal, the rage of mountains and stone, of things that existed before humans learned to speak. "You come into my home, threaten my life, and hurt the one person who ever saw me as more than a monster." She threw him. The man's body hit the cave wall with a sickening crack and slid down, motionless. Alura was at Elijah's side instantly, her hands, still covered in false blood and dirt, pressing against his wounds. "No, no, no, you can't die, not after everything, not after you came back for me." "Had to," he gasped, blood bubbling at his lips. "Couldn't let them hurt you. You stupid, brave, impossible man." Tears streaked through the grime on her face. "Why would you do this? Why would you risk everything?" "Because," he coughed, tasted copper. "Because you're not a monster, Alura. You're not a bridge or a curse or any of those things. You're just you. And you're beautiful, not despite what you are, because of it." "Elijah, please, you have to stay with me." "And because I think—" He struggled for breath, the world growing dim at the edges. "I think maybe I was meant to stumble into that cave, meant to find you, meant to understand that love isn't just for perfect people in perfect situations. It's for broken things trying to be whole." Her sobs shook her whole body. "Don't leave me. I just found you. I just learned how to love again. You can't go now?" "I'm sorry." His hand found hers, so small against her palm. "I wanted more time. Wanted to bring you those books. Wanted to teach you to dance. Wanted—" "What? Tell me what you wanted." "Wanted to marry you," he whispered. "Stupid, right? No preacher would do it. No church would have us. But wanted to anyway. Wanted to call you wife. Wanted to—" He coughed again, weaker this time. Alura's tears fell like rain onto his face. "Then we'll do it," she said desperately. "Right now. No preacher, no church, just us. I don't care if it's not official. I don't care if the world wouldn't recognize it. I'll marry you right here, right now, if you just stay with me." Elijah's eyes focused on her with effort. "You mean it? Every word. I love you, Elijah Kane. I choose you. I choose us. In front of whatever gods are listening.